Malo Lele, and welcome everyone to another live digital Kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. This is your host, Tua Fale, coming in from Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment capital of the world. It's been a couple days since we had a live digital Kava session, so before we got too heavy into the weekend, wanted to make sure we jumped online, put out some new content, and catch up on a couple episodes that we may be behind on. Today, we're really going to focus on catching up on the William Mariner um, series. So that's where we're going to spend the majority of our discussions today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the chat. We do our best to get to those as we go throughout the show. But if you really, really have something on your mind, put it in the super chats. We do make an effort to bring those up for conversation and discussions. And also, if you are a paying member of the YouTube channel, we also provide that as a benefit of your contributions and support as you make comments and you have that symbol right next to your name as a paying member of the channel. We make an effort to bring your comments and questions up as a recognition for that. First off, before we get too far into it, a couple housekeeping items. We are going live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Patreon. If you're on all those different platforms, please like, subscribe, follow, share the content in those various platforms. We really appreciate it. It actually goes a very long way, and it's one of those simple ways that you can continue to support and help us. If you are on the road looking for another way to interact and receive content, we do publish our podcast playlist on YouTube, on audio versions of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Audible, and iHeartRadio. We're seeing good growth and participation there. So, really, if you want to swing by and give a support and a follow there, and it gives you another way. If you're listening as you're driving in your car, another way to maybe listen. I think on our Spotify and Apple, um, you may not get some of the commercials or the ads that you get here on YouTube. So that's just another way you can participate in that. Sina, appreciate it all the way from Sydney. She says, Malo Lele and Happy Easter. Happy Easter, Sina, and Malo Lele, and welcome, welcome. Um, appreciate the love here from Slade 6767. Appreciate it. We appreciate it. The comment, and Slade says, I love you. We love you as well. Happy Easter, and appreciate that. A lot of Easter comments. Appreciate that. Happy Easter to everyone listening from around the world. So, coming back to the housekeeping items, as always, like, share, comment. That really does go a long way. And one of our listeners had kind of gave a great idea. There's typically a hype button on the videos, especially on YouTube. That goes a long way if you could share that. Speaking about YouTube, we just hit our 2,000 subscribers. So thank you very much. We continue to grow our subscriptions there. And once again, we can never say thank you enough to the paying members on YouTube and all those who contribute through that medium right there. On Facebook, where we're actually getting millions of views a year, I wanted to bring this up because we never really announced it. Our two main Facebook pages are Tevita H. Fale, his Facebook page. We release content there, and also on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. If you just search Polynesian Eyes, like, subscribe, follow there. That goes a really long way in helping us get our content out there and exposure, and really is a great way to contribute. As I mentioned earlier, today we're going to continue we're really far behind on our William Mariner content. So that's what we're going to really focus on today. And we're going to listen in, comment. If there's any questions or feedback from listeners, We're on Cava University, our friend Cava University, who has this channel where he reads through and does commentary on William Mariner's, or known as Tokiukamea, experience in Tonga in the 1800s or 19th century. So, with no further delay, we'll jump in, we'll listen, pause, comment, and just do some reactions on this great content by Kava University, Lolo Tuyaki.
Vava'u. Toi'omu has taken over.
Let's
Finau.
start all the way.
Chapter 5, Part 2. We're now in Vava'u. Toi'omu has taken over. Finau Ugalala's auntie, Toi'omu, is now the leader of all of Vava'u. Right? They decide now to build an entire fortress to protect everybody on Vava'u, enough for 8,000 people, and it was going to be the biggest fortress in all of Vava'u, probably the biggest even than Nuku'alofas. Remember, Nuku'alofas was huge; it was the biggest one on Tongatapu. Now Toi'omu wants to build a mu'a, and they call it a mu'a. There's in Tonga right now. There's a mu'a at the Tatakamotonga in Tonga right now. It's known to be the old capital of Tongatapu. Toi'omu right now is in.
Just one little nuance that even people on Tongatapu never fully understood. But obviously, because our family and we grew up in Mu'a, a lot of people think that Mu'a primarily just refers to the Tatakamotonga, and it's not that it's incorrect. The Tatakamotonga is part of Mu'a, but not all of Mu'a is the Tatakamotonga. So Mu'a, which is primarily the reference to the Tuitonga settlement there, Mu'a consists of three parts. It's the Tatakamotonga, Lapaha, and Talasiu. And so maybe it'd be worthwhile to bring that up. I was actually kind of surprised growing up in Tonga how very few people even in Tonga understood that, and they would always refer to Mu'a as, oh, let me bring this down here. Actually, they would always refer to Mu'a as in Tatakamotonga only, and not really understanding that Mu'a is broken into three parts, which is Tatakamotonga, right? So see it right here where it says Mu'a, Tatakamotonga, Lapaha, and Talasiu. So really, this is, when you look at right here where it says Mu'a, it's all of this area. It says here this is Alaki, but Alaki is actually down here. This is all part of the Tatakamotonga in this area. Then you come into Lapaha, especially goes down into here to Takuilau. And then this little portion right here, the smallest part of Moa, is the Talasiu. See, they even have the road here of Talasiu. So really, that's a little nuance that a lot of people even in Tonga didn't really fully appreciate. And so those are the three areas, as Lola's mentioned. They're talking about Mua, and it looks like in Vava'u, and Mua is just kind of like the main town, the centerpiece, so to speak. um Lenny Lenny here says Vava'u looks like the center of Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, and Niue. And hey, according to everybody from Vava'u, might as well be, right? Vava'u people, the Lolo, they love Vava'u, rightfully so. It's a beautiful place. Um, but maybe Lenny here is from Vava'u, why he makes that observation. Just a thought there, Lenny Malo. Welcome to the live digital Kava session today, Lenny. Appreciate it. Um, let's continue here.
Vava'u, and they're building a mu'a to protect themselves from Finau Kalala's attacks. Remember, Nuku'alofa had ditches 12 to 15 feet right in front of the entire fortress with sharpened bamboo sticks all the way around. The problem with that way was the fact that as soon as they pulled the cannons up to the beach, they were able to fire into Nuku'alofa. Toi'omu and the Va'u guys, who were there in Nuku'alofa with the Ha'apai guys and all of Finau Kalala's warriors, the Vava'u guys, along with Toi'omu, decide to build the same type of fortress with bamboo reeds all the way around, only they dug not just the ditch, but they dug the ditch all the way up and stacked the dirt to be as tall as the bamboo reeds. 12 to 15 feet high, so that if they were to pull cannons up and fire, they would be hitting the dirt, because they knew what the cannons can do to just bamboo when the cannons hit the bamboo.
New strategy,
so
new strategy.
that because they knew how the cannons worked on Nuku'alofa when they fired it in, they're going to make sure that the cannons aren't able to fire into Feretoa on Vava'u. Now, all the Faitokas now are in there, all the houses and everybody's houses, all the Matapules. It's like I said,
Faitoka is
where all the Matapules are gathered in a metropolis.
Cemeteries.
That's called a mu'a. There's one in Tonga, and now this is the one that was in Vava'u. It is said to have been at least 8,000 people. We're talking about 8,000 people on Vava'u. Now, the fortress is big enough to hold them all, their houses, their children, even their faitoka or their cemeteries on the inside of Feretoa. Typically in battle, just like when they went to
Feretoa. Let's see where Feretoa is in Vava'u here real quick. Where is Feretoa? I think we looked at Feretoa with David Burley here, because he did some work in Feretoa. Let's see if Google knows where Feretoa is. There we go. So that's Feretoa. There we go. So it's pretty much at the center with an inlet here. Pretty narrow inlet. Okay. So it's by Leimatua, very famous for their corned beef, and Mataika. So it's right in the middle. So this is so, I mean, one could imagine that this is 8,000 people. Probably, man, that's a pretty big fort, man. And they have a cemetery in there. Wonder if the cemetery still exists to this day. Trying to see if there's a sandy area. But very interesting. 8,000 people in a large fort. And as he's mentioning, they really, trying to account for the cannons, they built the earth mounds high so that the cannons couldn't just shoot at horizontally at the fort. So really, really interesting. There's some strategy. And it's interesting that there's a female leader, which is Ulukalala's aunt, I believe, is who he says Toi Umu is.
To a battle, a warrior would come out and call out a name of somebody they're going to fight. So this also showed how close they were and how they knew the people in Nuku'alofa before they attacked. There's a warrior in Vava'u who hated that Ha'apai had guns, Ha'apai had the cannons. And typically you would call the name of the person you wanted to fight one-on-one, strike your club up against the sand or whatever, and tell them this bat is for this guy or this club is for this guy and I'm going to kill this guy, or have a spear and spear the ground with it, and yell out a name of a person that they knew, the warriors
call out.
So they knew each other. Nobody was strangers here.
So basically, you know how we have all these UFC and these boxers, they're calling out who they want to fight next. Looks like they're practicing the similar exercise here before war, was to call out who your next opponent you desire to have.
Seems like they all knew which section of Tonga they were going to, and they knew the people there.
Oh, yeah, so they're all related.
They go attack anybody in Tonga or
everybody's
the villages. They would yell out, "All right, this is for Paula, and I'm gonna freaking stab him with this, or I'm gonna hit him with this, or whatever it was." There's a guy, instead of doing that, took on the name Fanafonua because of how he is going to attack the cannons, the guns. It wasn't a person. He decided, I'm going to run up to the guns. I'm going to stick my spear in it. I'm going to make sure that the guns no longer work. I am going to kill the guns. As soon as Finau finds out that Vava'u now is planning a defense, building the entire fortress of Feretoa, he decides to gather all of Ha'apai's warriors and go to Vava'u to stop them before their plans are made. But the priest told him, no, don't do that. The gods are not going to be pleased with this. Notice a lot of the things and a lot of their behaviors and the actions, the priests stayed neutral, or at least stayed honest to what God would approve of. Finau is angry. Finau wants to go take out his own auntie and all the warriors that he once led in Nuku'alofa to take them out because of his anger of them taking.
And this is an important insight, right? Because in theory, the priests are not directly involved in the politics and in the military aspects of things. There is a bug in here that I don't like. Anyways, they're kind of neutral. They're above the politics and the warfare. And the reason why I say that's a nuance that's important, that is what made the Tu'itonga unique and different. In all these warrings, this war and this chaos that's even happening right now, the Tu'itonga is not involved in those things because he is the only king that is a priest king. He has a priestly role and responsibility that all the other chiefs and all the other tu'is do not have, right? All the other chiefs and tu'is have a very militaristic, have a very administrative, political role and responsibility, or even economics. Like one of the things that's really come out of the Tu'ikanukupolo is his role was to make the economy thrive by making sure that the land is utilized to its fullest potential. The Tu'itonga is always above that. It would be a condescension, so to speak, or below the role and the elevated position of the Tu'itonga to descend and get involved in politics, in war, in these scuffles and so forth, because his is a priestly king role, very different from everybody else. And you can even see, even with the average priest, like Lolo's mentioned here, they're neutral. They're more concerned with the spiritual, the higher things, the more sacred things is what they're concerned with, and not necessarily battles or settling scores or politics and so forth.
Taking Vava'u back, right? Which they absolutely deserve. If I was in Vava'u, or Vava'u guys, even today, they would stand up and they would fight for Vava'u too. So the priests tell them, all right, relax. This is going to be against the will of the gods. It's better that you go to Vava'u and make friends with them, to make peace. Let them know that you're still on their side, and for you to just go on an all-out battle. Finau argues with them and tells them no. Finau feels like, all right, this priest always does things to make it look peaceful. He always does things to make, to make it look like he is actually for the gods. Like Finau is going against the priest because he feel like the priest is just doing this for optics, for looks. Every time we talk war, every time we talk battle, you're over here talking about the gods are displeased with me and with my actions and with battle and killing and all that, which the priest is right if you think of it from that point of view, from that perspective. But you also look at the warriors and the how Finau is, and how we've all described Finau through this entire book. We know that he's not going to back down based on his personality that we've known about Finau. He's mad. He doesn't take the advice of the priest. He wants to go to battle. Typically, Finau would take the advice of the priest and use the words of the priest to back up his desire to go to war. Like a politician, showed love, showed affection to the people, and he knew that the people are with the priest. They're with God, and how the behaviors of God and the characteristics of God are more on the peaceful side, more on the let's make sense of all this first before we go and do this. Now he's full out come out and saying he's not with the priest. This is to protect us. So now he's going against. Even the people are wondering, oh, the people used to think because you listen to the gods, you've been winning wars. Now he's making a bid against the priest, which is probably going to create a divide between the people that think that he's been winning because of the gods to now you want us to go to war just for you? We've been going to war because you've been following our traditions as far as trying to do things for Tonga, do things for the people, because we thought you loved God, loved the priest, loved us, and that's
Politics is a funny thing.
Allegiance and our loyalty to you has been based upon. And now you want to just go take out your auntie and all of our relatives. They're all family because you want control and power of Vava'u also, which
And this is an interesting thing. And this is great insight of, we have these conversations about Tuna and Fata and Talakai Faiki to Tonga and that whole little skirmish they had in Samoa. What the priest here is showing and speaking of is the same idea as to why Talakai Faiki would not respond in kind with the rebellion that happened. Because remember, at this point, the separation of military and kind of like the administrative portion of the government of the empire was still under the Tu'itonga during Talakai Faiki's time, right? And so it wasn't below the Tu'itonga at that time to react with military force. However, like Lolo is mentioning here, we got to remember Talakai Faiki's mother is from Samoa. And from accounts we've heard from Samoa, the village that the quote unquote skirmish happened was his mother's village. So, in a sense, those are his not just relatives, but very close relatives that this could be happening. So, if Talakai Faiki were to retaliate, right, with overwhelming force, he would have come in and squashed that, right? You're talking about bringing warriors not just from Tonga, Ha'apai, Vava'u. You're talking about warriors potentially from Fiji, from the Lao group. You're talking about warriors from Uvea, Futuna. You're talking about from the Niwas. You're talking about warriors from all these different islands descending under the Tu'itonga's authority to vanquish this issue. Talakai Faiki does not respond in that way because not only are those his family and so forth, but it doesn't appear to be an all-out war. There is no consistent accounts that this was a full-blown war. The only area that all the oral history agrees with is the surprise attack on his birthday celebration that led to him escaping. And Talakai Faiki never says, I'm leaving for forever. He says, I'll come back and I won't cause war. It's not going to be an issue. We'll get over it, right? It's just a family skirmish. We'll move on. Eh? And he even says, congratulations, and says Marietoa, Marietau. That's where the Marietoa title comes from. And this also has the same threads of Maui Tekelangi's account of the Battle of Velata, where Tokemoana and Taufa'ahau, who have kind of split Ha'apai into two camps, are warring with each other. And Tokemoana, who is closer related to Laufiritonga, but Laufiritonga is also related to Taufa'ahau. Laufiritonga is not yet the Tu'itonga. Taufa'ahau is not yet the Tu'ikanukupolu. And Laufiritonga brings in overwhelming number of warriors to Ha'apai. And does he just go in and have the same perception as Ulukalala to come in and just wipe these people off of the face of the earth because they offended a closer relative to Laufiritonga, who's the future Tu'itonga? No. He doesn't pursue that route. Laufiri Tonga says, no, that's not a chiefly way to deal with this. We're going to split our forces into three, and only 1/3 of the warriors will fight at a time. And that's the way we'll fight it. And, after a rotation of these, Taufa'ahau is going to get destroyed. He does not have the manpower or the resources to compete with that. But he also is understanding, why aren't they just coming out and just destroying us? They have the overwhelming force. Then he realizes Laufiri Tonga, who's now the head, doesn't really want to wipe him off the map. And that he's basically providing time for Taufa'ahau and Tokemoana to find a resolution on this, so that not half of Ha'apai has to be destroyed in order to settle this. That's when Laufiri Tonga, when Taufa'ahau understands this, that's when he says the only person that really wants this war is Tokemoana, and he sets a plan to eliminate Tokemoana from the battle, and then he sends his tribute to Laufiri Tonga. And that's where Maui Tegalangi shares, that's where the practice of covering the hoofs and the mouth of the ngawe, or the pig, was first introduced. And that was to signal to Laufiri Tonga that Taufa'ahau will not use the hands to act against Laufiri Tonga and the Tu'itonga, and will not even speak negatively of the Tu'itonga with the covering of the mouth. We're seeing some of those dynamics even in William Mariner's account here that Lolo is sharing. And you would just say, oh, yeah, it's a priestly kind of approach of wanting peace. But when you understand the bigger picture of the role of religion, the role of the priest and the Tu'itonga, and the kingly line functions, you can see threads of how and why Tonga was structured the way it was, and why it provided so much stability over time, and why when the West came and made contact with Polynesia, that Tonga was able to maintain enough cohesiveness to establish a government in a manner that the West would recognize, and provide internal unity to endure the risk of getting colonized. These are all things that are embedded, that if you don't understand these aspects of the culture, the history, the religion, the politics, and the psyche of not just the Tongan individual, but the Tongan perception of government, of power, of national identity. There is a national identity built into this, right? And actually, this is a good point here, Lenny. Lenny says, like Japan. This is one of the reasons why I'm fascinated with with Japanese culture, because it's like I see so many of those similarities, Lenny, between the Japanese culture, this level of understanding hierarchy, understanding your place in society, and maintaining protocol and cultural responsibility, is a big part of the Japanese psyche. And I can't help to say, but see the same thing like you're mentioning here, Lenny, that's a big part of why Tonga was able to accomplish what it did as the center and the founder of a Polynesian empire, and to overcome colonization. For that exact same thing, Lenny, that's how Japan was able to project power beyond the islands of Japan, which is like the British Empire, small islands, small groups in regard to the empire and influence that they carried. So, yeah, Japan is the one who tried to be friends with the UK as well, Lenny says. Yeah, absolutely. Not surprised by that, Lenny.
From Finau's point of view, he wants to be king. And if you want to be king, these are the decisions that you have to make to rule. If it's not through politics, if it's not through diplomacy, then it's through military force. So his anger for his auntie and his anger for now the Matapules that were in Vava'u superseded the priest, superseded the gods. Now he is going for vengeance for himself. So he prepares for war. All the warriors in Hapai now, and remember, these guys were all the same guys that went to war with the Hapai guys. These are the same guys that took the Port-au-Prince together. The Vava'u guys, they had Vava'u guys in Hapai, and they took the Port-au-Prince together. While Mariners was there, they all went and took Nuku'alofa together. While Mariner was there, they had that little run-in with Talakai and found out who Talakai was. There's so much history at this point between Hapai and Vava'u that you would think that they would be close enough, but you also know that this is the characteristics and the behavior of Tonga back then. Finau Ulukalala has always been known to be, we've always heard him in history, to be a great chief and a great warrior and a great leader, right? One who led Vava'u from Vava'u. Then we find out now in history that he's from Hapai and he wants to take Vava'u, and this is the history that happened between Hapai, him, Tuponiwa, and Vava'u. Now he's prepping for war. During this time, Finau Ulukalala's son, Moingangongo, he comes from Samoa, right? So he comes back from Samoa and he comes back with Vuna. Remember, Vuna is the chief that when Tuponiwa and Finau wanted to go and take Vava'u, and to make sure that there's no Tuku'aho loyalists in Vava'u, Vuna was there, and Vuna left, and he went to Samoa. And now Moingangongo comes back to Hapai, and brings Vuna back with him. Mariner says he shows up with six canoes, and one of the canoes has 60 people on it, right? We've seen the pictures of the canoes, and
I find this interesting. Our brothers and sisters in Samoa were pushing back against Mautekelangi because he said Ama, who a lot of Samoa recognizes as a chief that was in Samoa that went to Tongatapu in the installation of the Tuikan Kupolu. Mautekelangi shares that Ama was in Tonga, went to Samoa because the Tui Tonga, when the Tui Hatakalaua was installed, Kaulfonua Fekai installs his brother as the Tui Hatakalaua. He relocates his residence to Ha'amoa, to Samoa, and takes an entourage with him that includes Vuna, Akawola, and a handful of quote unquote, even though it was the same nation, same people, Tongan chiefs with him to Samoa. And so when he comes back, the Tui Tonga comes back to Tonga to establish the Tui Tonga settlement in Mu'a. In creating the Tui Kanukupolu, he brings those chiefs that we always kind of think of, oh, they're Samoan chiefs, but their history shows that they left from Tonga. Just like Vuna and a handful of these other chiefs, that when the war actually breaks out, they decide to relocate to Samoa. You got to remember, some of these chiefs have residences in Samoa. They have land in Samoa. They have land on Tongatapu, Vava'u, Ha'apai, potentially in other islands as part of their inheritance or area of leadership governance, and having those different areas by marriages into those different islands. So as we can see here, this is not something that we just have to say, oh yeah, that never happened. It's even proven in William Mariner's account that yes, Tongan chiefs would move to Samoa and stay in Samoa, and for one reason or another, when they came back, they would come back.
there's two of them, and there's like a platform house and stuff, and perhaps it's one of the bigger ones. But he said one of the canoes had 60 people on it. Now, the canoe, in my mind, I'm thinking about, two people because I've been on a camp where there was two of us, and I've seen them when I was in Tonga. I've seen the racing ones that had 20, 30, or to 50 on one canoe, but they're racing. This one had 60 people on it, and there were 6 of them. And one of the canoes, even, he says that a gust of wind took it, and it had all of, basically, it was a trailer of canoes that had all of Moingangongo's treasures on it. Moingangongo said, I had one canoe, nothing but treasures. All my stuff from Samoa, everything that I owned was on this canoe. And a gust of wind took it and buried it in the ocean. And the other canoe shows up to Hapai. Moingangongo tells Finau and them, yeah, we stopped by Vava'u. Remember Vava'u, when you see Vava'u, it's north when you're coming down towards Hapai. They said they stopped by in Vava'u. And they said that they got there, they saw I guess they read the facial expressions and saw body language and the nonverbal cues, and they kind of figured there's something going on here. So they get there, they don't know what's going on. They don't know the political standoff they're having between Toi'umu, Finau's aunt, Vava'u, against Finau at this point and his boys and Hapai. They get there, Moingangongo gets there with his fleet of canoes. He says they get there, and he says they almost detain him. And so they get ready, prepare, and they set back out into sea again. See the ability they had to read, right? They were all on watch all the time. Because, first of all, they all knew each other. You would think, hey, what's up? Hey, But they were always on watch. They were always on point. As soon as they read the vibe, they immediately knew, oh, something's wrong. Remember, Vuna's from Vava'u. So why would Vuna have a problem? And Moingangongo is Finau's son. So they knew that they at least had the leadership or at least the nobility to have control when they see people, especially since Vuna's from Vava'u. They get there, something's happening, they can tell, and then they sit back out to sea and go to Hapai. They get to Lifuka, there's a great big feast, have an eating for them, celebration for their return. All of this distracts Finau for a few days. They have this whole celebration thing of Finau wanting to go attack Vava'u at this point. It's a distraction now that they're in celebration mode. There's two daughters of chiefs, two different daughters of chiefs that were set apart and they were engaged to Moingangongo, and they were to stay that way and be engaged to Moingangongo while Moingangongo is in Samoa. While Moingangongo is in Samoa, these two young ladies were already known and already set betrothed and engaged to Moingangongo. Moingangongo shows up with 2 Samoa wives, them and their 6 canoes, and the people that showed up with them, plus Vuna, they show up, and Moingangongo has 2 wives from Samoa. And now he's coming and he's
how
going
closely
to marry
connected
the 2
we were.
Young girls.
It's the same people,
chiefs,
same country.
then, so that he'll end up with 4 wives altogether. But he wanted to have the wedding ceremony in Hapai to follow the way that the Samoa people have weddings. A week after they get back to Hapai, they start preparing for this wedding. They go around, they start collecting food. Talo, kumala, whatever it is, right? Manioke, everything, start collecting the food to start to prepare for this wedding. They made cake. There is a plant, and if anybody in Tonga knows or whatever, let me know, because I've never heard of this plant. But Mariner said it's from the plant called the Mahoa. They would take the Mahoa and they would pound it into powder or grind it into powder, and they would make cake out of it. That makes sense since we call flour Mahoa. When you say something with an extra letter, it's usually the juice or the extract from that thing. So from the Mahoa plant, they made cake, and they say it's a big luxury food in Tonga back then, but it's made out of the Mahoa plant. And it's ironic that Mariner called it a cake, and he called it the flower of the Mahoa plant. We now, these days, we call flour Mahoa, and we make bread and we make anything that's made out of flour, we call Mahoa. The same way the weddings are prepared that we've already talked about before. They're on the Malae, right? It's the open green area with one house, and it's where everybody's celebration. This is their Teufaiva. Everything is stacked up. The pigs, the yams, everything's just stacked up, put together. And now the cakes. And cakes are used for a lot of things these days.
And I do want to recognize here that a lot of people say that Taufa'ahau stole Laufiri Tonga's wife in Lupepau, but it's the same kind of situation here. Lupepau was betrothed to Laufiri Tonga, but the marriage had not been consummated. And even if they were to have the marriage, but don't have children yet, it's not considered consummated until a child is brought to fruition within a marriage that it's kind of considered binding. And so this concept that, you know, that was a sign of Taufa'ahau exerting dominance over the Tu'itonga by taking Lupepau, had absolutely nothing to do with that. And there was no real quote unquote taboo, so to speak.
As far as we pass cakes around. So now we know that there's a Mahoa plant. If anybody knows what that is, comment
I
that
wonder
down.
what the
So
Mahoa is.
there's a
That's interesting.
plant that they make flour out of and make bread or make this cake out of. I'm imagining that this is what we call to'okutu now, because Mariner said that they take coconut and coconut milk and they mix it with the mahoa, what we call mahoa now, which Mariner called flour, mix it up, made a paste, and then baked it. So in my mind, I'm thinking that's how they make to'okutu, but they use it with talo or some other potato type. Mash it, put coconut milk in it, along with the coconut shreddings. They make a paste out of it and they put it in the ground and they bake it. That's delicious. That's what I can imagine, because it's sweet, it's coconutty, it's coconut milky, and it's as if it was made out of flour.
I wonder what that Mahoa is. Let's see if our digital assistant here is. What is the Mahoa plant in Tonga that William Mariner describes in his book? And let's see if our digital assistant here can confirm what exactly William Mariner. Let's share this so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Says the Mahoa, often spelled Mahoa or Mahoa or Mahoa in Tongan context, plant described by William Mariner in an account of the natives of the Tonga Islands, is a Polynesian arrowroot. Taka, also known historically as taka or similar. Mariner, via the vocabulary in the book, defines it as a plant, the glutinous root of which is used for the same purpose as the to another plant, likely from adhesive mucinous qualities, which see of this root is also prepared a sort of flour used as an article of the diet. It appears as food item description of Tongan dishes and preparations such as loloi, a baked pudding made from mahoa root and coconut juice, uh, taungoto, taungoto, a baked cake of mahoa root, coconut pieces, and coconut juice, fukalili, powder of the mahoa root into boiling water to form a semi-jellied mass. Hey, that's the topai that you're thinking of, maybe, Lenikit. I saw that in the comments. It says it features a inasi. It's featured in the inasi ceremony, an important annual first fruits. Excuse me. Is a tuberous perennial in the yam family, native to Southeast Asia, but introduced prehistorically across the Pacific as a canoe plant. In Tonga, it grows in bush allotments, often intercropped with yams or taro, or wild in secondary vegetation. The tubers yield edible starch used as a flour or in puddings and jellies, and a starchy paste valued for its binding properties. Historically, in Tonga, it served more as a famine or supplementary food, and crucially for preparing pastes to glue layers of tapa cloth. Modern substitutes like cassava or commercial pastes have reduced its cultivation, though it retains its significance. Mariner's accounts. Um, let's see if what is it called here to see if we can get a picture. Arrowroot. I don't even know what arrowroot is. Yeah. Sam Finau says like Faika and Putin. It's that seems to be what was used traditionally to make all those things until we got Western flour. Oh, dude, I did not. Let's share this. I've seen these in Tonga and never realized that that's what that is. But I always thought it was a weed. Interesting. So it's this plant right here. And I guess they take the root. I'm assuming this is the root of it. Let's go to Wikipedia. It speaks of flowering plant in the yam family. It is native to the islands of Southeast Asia. Austronesian peoples introduced it as a canoe plant throughout Indo-Pacific. What does it mean by canoe plant? One of the major early human migrations was the maritime Austronesian expansion. They include crops and animals believed to have originated from Hemdu and Magaban cultures in theorized pre-Austronesian homelands in China, as well as other plants and animals believed to have been domesticated from within Taiwan, maritime Southeast Asia, and New Guinea. These plants are often referred to as canoe plants, especially in the context of migrations of the Polynesians. Domesticated plant animals and plants introduced during historic times are not included. Interesting. So yeah, I've seen this kind of plant. I want to say, but it was always kind of perceived as a weed. Wow. Okay. Learn something new every day. So that's where the term Mahoa comes from. Oh, sorry, I'm reading this. This is what I was reading here earlier. Um, interesting. Interesting.
Take the loa cow, they make ribbons and they make decorations and they decorate themselves with it. They make leis with it. They put it on. Now Finau is sitting there with his matapules and they make a great big giant, basically half circle. One group of people start on the right, one group of people start on the left. They make a great big half circle. They've all took down the coconut branch, right? They cut down the green part of the coconut branch and they carved out what looked like little clubs of the green coconut branch. In Tonga, usually we've cut down coconut branches,
Palalafa.
we make boats out of them and push them in the water. Well, they cut down and
That's
they
like
made
the
little
palalafa of
clubs
the
out of them.
leaves.
So we have
Yeah.
two groups, one from the
And really, they use this a lot. I remember doing a dance in elementary school. We did the taufakaniwa, and we used the palalafa from the they're not the branches, the leaves of the coconut tree, and it's kind of like the stem portion, um, and that's what he's referring to. Mm.
Samoa side, most of them were for Samoa side, and the other one they had with the Hapai guys, and some of the Hapai guys were on both sides, and basically at a face-off. This is what they're doing to begin the celebration of a wedding.
Entertainment.
Moingangongo himself had a club, and he was standing on one side. Finau and the Matapule is sitting down watching these two groups. The two brides come out of Finau's house, which close to the Malae, and they're escorted over, and they're dressed in Hamoa mats, right? We've heard stories, oh yeah, they bring hot more wives with hot more dress and hot more mats, and that's what they did everything with. Well, at this point in time, that's what they did, but it wasn't the same all the time. During this wedding, which is probably where this part of history comes from, and made it applicable to all of Tonga, which wasn't the case ever. As we've been reading this story, whatever applied to Hapai and Vava'u applied only to Hapai and Vava'u, and sometimes to other places. But this time, these two wives, they weren't wrapped up like Tuitonga's wedding that we've talked about. They were wrapped lightly, but it was of the silky version of the mats wrapped around them, and it was of great value. because it was hand woven. And Mariner said that these were hand woven and perhaps took a couple years to make a bunch of these, but they looked like they were made by machines. It looked like they were manufactured using machines. That's how fine the handwork was on these mats that these two young women were wearing. Mariner describes that they were sandalwood. We've talked about sandalwood.
And if you guys watched our episode with Jake Fitzemanu, he has gone throughout the world, visited some of these fine mats that are held not only in museums but in collections that are not open to the public, and he mentions the same thing. He says that some of these mats look like cloth, they feel like it, they crease like cloth, they're soft. And so, like you're seeing here, is as the descriptions that Lolo is giving, some of these mats were beautiful. They look like cloth, they feel like cloth, and they were of high value, right? So, there's a lot of justification and proof that this is not an exaggeration that William Mariner is giving here in his description of those mats.
Sandalwood and how they use sandalwood for a lot of things. They rub sandalwood on themselves, and they've also taken some turmeric looking color plant and mixed it with the sandalwood, and they've kind of put it on their skin, and it gave it an orange look on their skin. The mixture of sandalwood oil plus this turmeric.
Wonder if it's langakari, maybe.
Gave it a little more orangey look. So these two young wives basically walked out looking like Donald Trump up in here in this mud. You feel me? But that's what whatever this was.
Hey, Donald Trump is restoring
on their skin
old Tongan style.
Matting. The crowd themselves were all put lays on and decorations, and everybody just basically looked like a wedding that's about to happen. The two young ladies come and are seated. Moingangongo's two wives from Samoa are already seated, and now they're going to watch them go into combat. As part of the celebration, they're going to fight each other. So this is how it works. The two parties are separated. The Samoa and some of the Hapai guys on one side, and all of the Hapai guys on the other. The wedding party's there. The two wives are there. The two newly about to be brides are there also. One of the people from one side will run up with his club. Now, remember, it's made out of the inside of the coconut branch, so it isn't super hard, but I mean, it is, it's hard enough. I've been hitting one by one. It's hard enough. One
it's hard over, enough. Like,
sits down in front of somebody.
It's painful, and because it's still green, it's flexible, and it's not pleasant. I've been punished, corporal punishment with one of those things, and it'll deliver a blow. Is it going to be lethal? No, but you're going to feel that for days after, from a strike from those. So it's interesting. I think it can be dangerous.
Or sits down in front of the group, and then a challenger would step up, take his challenge, and they would move to the middle, start fighting with those coconut stick clubs, and they would have one guy behind them to be their second to take over, basically like tag team, ready to replace the other if something should happen. Now this is they're doing just for their enjoyment, for their pleasure.
UFC
part of it, right? This is the gladiator version of a wedding ceremony, but they're doing it for entertainment. They talk and decide whose rules they're going to fight after. We're going to fight the Tonga way or the Samoa way. The Samoa way, if you fall down, you get to continue to beat that guy that's fallen down, right? That's the Samoa way of fighting these little celebration fights. The Tonga way, if somebody falls down, you're not allowed to beat them. You're not allowed to touch them anymore. You let them get up and say if he's still willing to go, or if that person gives up, he gives up. So they get together, they agree what rule they wanted to fight under, they fight. First two go, one of them fall down, the next one will jump in.
Hopefully we're not repeating the same evidence, because we've had this conversation and this reaction to this similar thing. And, Mr. Aotearoa said one's a little bit more savage and brutal. Turned out into this whole fiasco on TikTok where they were saying we were looking down. It's like, No, it's just a matter of fact that hitting someone that is defenseless is a little more savage, right? Than allowing someone who's defenseless. Because this is not war. This is entertainment. So it has boundaries. And so Mr. Atero was doing an observation where he said, the Samoan way is a little more savage. And the individual who went online to correct Mr. Aotearoa and said, you could have done this a much better way. Even he said that the Samoan way was a little crazier. But, selective offense or selective feelings um, came out there. And so we did a whole episode or live responding to that. But there's a little bit of history behind this. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny to remember that episode.
The other one falls down, or until those two beat, or that one guy beats both of them, or one beats one, and then the other one beats that one, and then it goes the second one determines. But that's how this is either began and ended. And after they're done, they move aside, and the next ones come up with a second guy behind them to tag team once their guy drops. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 going at the same time with a second. So that's 6 to 8 people on the battlefield at the same time at the applause of everybody, right? This is like I said, this is the Coliseum of this. Everybody's applauding, everybody's cheering. Chi-hoo, right? The family members are cheering on their guy. It's like they're at a football game cheering on, go Shiane, right? Sometimes there'd be 3 or 4 and they'd just be going at it right there with their seconds behind them. Same rules. So you fall down, out, second comes in, boom, fall down, out, and that's the rotation. They had their own cheer for the winner, right? For the champion of this thing, and they would have their own celebration. They didn't know what it was. I don't know what it is, but this is just their call out for victory, and it goes something like wo ah ma do I oi I oi. Anyways, after they're done, whatever the champion of the group is, the champion of each group of winners would come and sit down in front of Finau and the party, through sign of respect, sit down in front of him, and immediately gets up and goes back into the back of the line or back to his group. Moingangongo, the prince, even got involved and got his in, right? He was a young guy. He decided to get in there and get in on some of these fights. These are just for celebration. 2 wives are there. 2 newly brides are there. Everybody's watching. It's a great look. I think it's great. We should probably go
give
back
the
to
people
that.
what they want.
I would have liked to
entertain the
when
masses.
I got married. Perhaps, I would have won, obviously. No,
Maria.
I was young, but I don't know if I was that tough. I was playing ball in college at Snow College. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have wanted to fight a D1 guy for sure. Nah, I would have won. I would have got mine in for sure. Feel me? Then again, I would have got too. You know what I mean? But when I got married, my wife's brothers, they were young. Yeah, I would have got them. I would definitely got them. Easy. Meredith says Moingangongo got into like 14 or 15 of these battles and came off victory in every one, which is, I'm thinking, they probably just let him win. It's the prince and he's, getting married. You don't want to do this to him in front of his wives and newly brides, because if I do this in front of his newly brides, newly brides might like me, and then I'm gonna be out for 2 new wives. Anyways, he said he won in every single one. I would love to think that he was that, championesque, championship-ish, but at the same time, it's like, well, come on, yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're the prince, your girls, wives, king is right there. That's your pops. Of course, I'm gonna let you win, bro. What are they gonna do to me? Nah. Now, anyways, yeah. So he came out victory every single one. The club fights end. Clubs are done, and now the boxing and wrestling is about to begin. Same thing, same way, same process. And Mariner says that a lot of these descriptions were described in Captain Cook's book, in Captain Cook's voyage books, and so we'll have to one day look into exactly how that is, because he doesn't go into too much detail. He says a lot of the descriptions were done by Captain Cook, so we won't get into detail. but they're done pretty much similar the same way. One guy with the second, throw hands, punch, fall down, second comes in, throw hands, winner stays, next two up. Both in the boxing and the wrestling. All for the pleasure of the wedding party and those who were coming to the wedding. After they were done, the prince went to a house, near the Malae with his Matapules, and they went to go get ready for the wedding. They wrapped their heads. They had Ngatu on. They had a white Ngatu, white, decorated with red feathers on their heads, wrapped on their heads. They did the whole sandalwood thing and other necklaces or ornaments. Moingangongo comes over to the Malae, where the Fade were on the Malae, walks up and takes these two young ladies by the hand. Moingangongo takes his two new brides by the hand, and he's walking them around the Malae, so all the people that are there could see. So all of Hapai is there, and they can see, and they're clapping and cheering, and the Matapules are yelling out, "Shmari! Mari, malo." So the Samoa people start clapping and keeping time with their hands, and they start singing. And Mariner often said that the Tonga people sing these songs too. This is how frequently they weren't frequent flyers, frequent journey travelers.
Wait, I thought we were different people. I thought we weren't one nation. I thought there wasn't a cohesive culture that people try to proclaim. And when we say that there was a unifying identity of a Polynesian empire, what's going on here? Because we're not just talking about a small group of people that came from Ha'amoa to Ha'apai. We're talking the whole community joins in and sings in these things. Once again, that sounds very much like a national identity that's shared. There's little nuances, just like there's the same game, little bit of nuances in rules, regional nuances in rules, but it's the shared game, right? Just like the singing and the languages, yes, there might be variation, but it's the same people, same language with slight variations.
That Mariner himself has heard these songs in Tonga, but these are Hamoa songs, and perhaps the Tonga people are singing Fijian and Kuka and other songs, but Mariner never, stopped to ask what the words mean. But he's heard these songs before, so the Hamoa people start singing. They start keeping time with their hand, and times with their hands. They start singing the song. And typically nowadays, Hamoa people keep time like this. La 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 la. Right? That's how Hamoa keeps time. And I'm just thinking that this is probably what they did, kept time the way they keep time, and started singing this song. La fe, la fe, la fe, la fe, la fe, la fe, la, she la la. Nah, I ain't even gonna attempt this mug, bro. But the song goes, la fe, la fe, la fe, la fe, la fe, si ni lau, si amai tato, ua lau, fia talao, moingangongo e, tupo mola kepae. That's the song. I'm trying to put it into sound, but I'm not a composer, y'all. I'm sorry, I'm not a music composer of any kind. But that's the sound. That's the song that they sing. The Samoans sing at this wedding. Tupomola Kepa is the name of one of the brides. She was of a greater rank than the other bride. Moingangongo walks them around while the Hamoa people are singing this, keeping the time, walks them around, then walks the two brides back to the little house that's on the Malae that they're on, sits them down on the Ngatu that they're sitting on, and their bales on Ngatu, so they're a little higher up. And then Moingangongo goes out onto the Malae with all the people that he got dressed with the white turbans and red feathers, and they start dancing. So maybe if they were either unified or they were just dancing to the song that the Samoa people were singing. And while Samoa people were singing, Moingangongo and his company were dancing like the Ha'amoa guys dance, which is, it does look different. There is a different look to it, but they start dancing like that, which entertained everybody. Everybody was happy to see, right? It's a great thing to see, and it's a great way to celebrate. Mariner thought that Samoa, the way the dancers are, they didn't have as much agility. He was saying these guys didn't have that much agility, but they were still graceful, which means he feels like.
And you can still see, I mean, one could make the argument when you look, granted, there's a whole theory behind, with the Tonga, um, and borrowing quote unquote dances from Ha'amoa, but it's actually, as has been shared, that it was the same dances given different names to give the appearance that Tonga had released, not followed the traditional dances, and made it more palatable for Christianity by giving the perception that these things had been revamped. But really, it was reintroducing the same similar dancing with different packaging. And you can kind of see, even in the dancing today, when you look at some of the dances of Ha'amoa versus how the dances, especially by the men, the difference in, you can see what William Mariner is talking about, right? Fluidity of movement and say, let's say, athletic movements, that is much more in the preferred taste. Flow, athletic moves. When you look at the laka, you look at the mako and so forth by men, it's a more fluid and athletic. I mean, granted, the Samoan dances, there is a lot of movement, but it's not as athletically encompassing as even the Tongan dances that of today. That's my perspective, right? So I can see where William Mariner is saying what he's saying in his descriptions here. I agree with that.
The Tonga way of dancing required a lot more coordination and agility, which is something that I obviously have, but the way they did it was still graceful, and he said somewhat more attitude, whatever that means. While that was all going on, the brides were then escorted over to Moingangongo's home. All the food Finau shared out. The bigger portions were given by Finau to the people from Ha'amoa, the bigger portions, which is customary in Tonga, to give out the bigger portions to those who are visiting. They gave other large portions to people from Fiji and to Futuna. So here's a time we hear Futuna. The Futuna people were there. This is how, so we got to look at it as just like here, if we were to drive, I'm in Missouri, if people were to have a wedding here in Missouri, anybody related would come from California, from Texas, from Utah.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're probably a lot further than they are on the ocean, perhaps. I'm not really sure. I need to do some of that research to find out the distances. But Futuna people were here. Fiji people were here. Ha'amoa people were here. And Finau were giving out the bigger portions to these people, the visitors. After he shared those portions out, Finau.
I'm interested to know, and maybe this is something we can ask Grok at some point. You know what? Why at some point when we can just ask now? If there's any historical accounts of multiple people from different islands in Ha'amoa recorded by missionaries. Is there a recorded account of people from different islands beyond Tongans in Samoa attending a community or family event before, let's say, 1890? Let's see what Grok finds here. Let's see here. Yes, there are multiple recorded accounts, both written in European sources, preserved Samoan, Tongan oral traditions. of people from Tonga, and sometimes, yes, there are multiple recorded accounts. But this is both in written European sources and preserved account of Samoan Tongan oral tradition. So this is just oral traditions of people from Tonga and sometimes other islands like Fiji attending these events. But it says it's mostly Tongan. It says Mariner's account provides one of the earliest. So it's just referencing Mariner's account. When European preserves. Oh no, I was rereading something. Attending Fiji. These interactions were common due to long-standing political, marital, and trade, intermarriage, high-ranking marriages between Samoan nobility and Tongan or Fijian royalty often involved large tattoo other events. These accounts predate heavy influence and appear in sources like missionary journals, John Williams, beachcomber narratives, and ethnographies drawing on oral traditions. Give the specific sources and reference the specific paragraphs that mention the accounts and give the preceding and proceeding paragraphs that mention the accounts directly. Let's see if that gives us what we're looking for. Would love to read what they're saying, where these people come from. Grok's thinking here. So we're going to try and pull out the specific references and see if we can identify and just kind of read through these accounts. It looks like John Williams is a very popular one that'll pull out here on his journals and we can see what he finds. John Jackson, also known as William Derber. Yes. So this one, Tongans visiting Samoa for fine mats. So that's just Tongan. Tu'itonga Fatafehi visiting Samoa for traditional tattoo. That's just the Tongan. Tongan Princess Va'etoefanga traveling to Samoa for marriage to Samoan paramount chief. Once again, it's the Tongans doing the traveling here. I don't see one that says Fiji. Says here, describes frequent Tongan and mixed Fijian / Uvean visits. Give me the details of the John Jackson account mentioned above. Let's see what Grok here says. William Dapier, a British sailor, arrived in the Pacific around 1840. While on a whaling voyage, he was kidnapped by Samoans from Manua on Ka'u early 1840. He lived among Samoans for several months to a few years, using pseudonym John Jackson during his time in Samoa and parts of Fiji. He later moved to Fiji, where he spent time in places like Natewa and other islands engaging in trade, firearm repair, and beachcombing activities. He had multiple wives and adopted local adapted to local customs while observing and sometimes participating in inter-island interactions. His observations come from the period 1840 to 1842, while based in Samoa, especially Ta'u or Manua, before shifting focus to Fiji. Here's the relevant part for Samoan inter-island, including Tongan visits, appear in narratives. Narrative of John Jackson in his residence in the Fijis. This is the primary published. Come on, give me the account. 1853 does not describe a single large community or family event like a wedding or tattoo ceremony with Tongans attending in Samoa in exhaustive detail. Instead, it provides eyewitness observation of frequent inter-island mobility and mixed participation in alliances, wars, and visits during his time in the region. These reflect ongoing networks where Tongan, Samoans, Uveans from Wallace, and Fijians interacted through voyages, trade, warfare, and social titles. Tongan chief visiting Fiji, illustrating the mobility of Tongan leaders across the region. This shows Tongans traveling with retinues for political and social purposes. In context of a Fijian chief preparing for local war, the chief responds to a request for help by saying he will bring his men, among whom there are Tongans, Samoans, and Uveans. This, in the context of a Fijian chief preparing for war, the chief responds to a request for help by saying he will bring his men, directly indicates mixed groups of warriors, allies from Tonga, Samoa, and Uvea, participating together in conflict-related events, which often involved feasting, planning, gatherings, and community. Doesn't give Jackson witnessed the arrival of the Tongan boat from Lifuka in the Ha'apai group Tonga in Rewa, Fiji. Among the Tongans was an African-American man, a deserter, cook from a European vessel who had been in Tonga. This highlights regular canoe voyages between Tonga and Fiji, with Samoans also part of the broader networks. Yeah, it doesn't give a lot of clarity here. What I'm seeing here is the Tongans are consistently there, and in all of the travels, it's always the Tongan boats primarily that are doing a lot of these travels. But okay, that's something we can dig into in the future, and get more clarity. But let's come back here and continue.
Now basically said, okay, everybody else, so the people here in Hawaii, everybody else can come and grab a piece. And some would walk, some would run. I'm trying to get mine. Some
Yeah.
of that kiri buaka, bro, that crunch is making me run fast. B. And they would come and gather some in a basket, run back to their places, and people come and take the rest of this heaping pile of food. And this portion of what was going on at the end, once all the other stuff was passed out, the Futuna and the Fiji and the Samoa people were watching this like it was another activity. People rush to the food to grab food and run it back to their different places. They sat there and they were watching like, oh, what's going on? So perhaps it wasn't a everybody everywhere thing. This was a Tonga thing or maybe just a Hawaii thing. But Mariner said that the Futuna, Samoa, and Fiji people sat there and they were watching people run in and grab whatever they wanted. Nowadays, right? This is their fa'o. When they have a ceremony, this is their fa'o malkai and take. Back then, this is what it was. They rushed and they had to fa'o and take. Nowadays, you go to a wedding and people's aunties is going before the ceremony even starts, fa'oing food, taking it to their cars, right? We need to change all that. Maybe we should do the same thing after the ceremony.
Watch
okay, everybody's gone. The wedding party's gone. Okay, now aunties, you guys can fa'o and watch them rush into fa'o trays of food. We should do that now. You know what I'm saying? That'll be another entertaining part of the wedding or the wedding ceremony. Mariner said there's a big pig on top of this pile of, food, and people would run and grab and pull at it from different angles to where it was freaking tumbling in the dirt and they were pulling at it, leg, limb, they were just tearing at it, cutting it, whatever. and it was getting dirty, sand and dirt in it. So they obviously had to wash it after this little scene of or
Chaos.
tearing it apart. After the food was separated, everybody was done. Now they're going to have a boxing match. This consisted of people from northern Hapai and people from southern Hapai. So we have Ha'ano up top, you have Lifuka down below, you have Wiha down there, right? You have Foa, and so basically it's the north and the south, right? The norteños and the sureños, if you will, if you're from America and the California area where I grew up. So this is basically north and south boxing match.
State of origin.
Eventually the north won. The entirety of the championship match, the north won. Ironically, in the north is Ha'ano. I was boxing training with a guy from Ha'ano whose answers are from Ha'ano. His name is Shone Po'uha. They stayed in Nakolo, but him and his answers come from Ha'ano. And so I'd like to think that his ancestors and my ancestors from the Whaleloa area knew each other and were part of this ceremony. Mariner makes note that when they do these ceremonies, they wear a white ngatu decorated with the red feathers, and it is not common to wear anything like that unless you're going to war. People who wrap their heads with this, or people who are celebrating like they are here. And
maybe that's why Rambo is so popular with Tongans, because Rambo had the headband. Tongans, they could identify with that because for thousands of years, that's how you got to war. You did the headband and the Karate Kid. Maybe that's why those movies are so popular.
Or at work or on canoes, but typically they don't wrap their heads. So I'm thinking, because you wrap your heads and this is what it is, and we only do that during time of war, it's an indicator of what they're going through. If their heads are wrapped, something's happening. If their heads are wrapped, people are asking what's going on. Unless it's a celebration like this specifically, or some people are just out in the field working. But there's something about the head wrapping or the head, those turban things that they wear, that were more indicators of the warriors going to war. He said that any other time, if you were to wear a headdress, it would be disrespectful. So whatever visually it projected into sight, it's obvious that wrapping, that head wrapping thing is meant for one purpose and one purpose only. And if you're doing it outside of that purpose, it's a sign of disrespect. But like I say again,
Interesting.
You're allowed to have it on if you're working. You're allowed to have it on if you're working on canoes or if you're going fishing. But there's a purpose for wearing a head wrapping. You can't just wear one for free. This ceremony is a good reason. Probably also it makes it look more like they're at war when they fight or when they dance. And they lived strictly to this because they believe that even though the chiefs aren't around to see, they believe that God's watching, right? Another sign of their faith. They always believe God's watching, or the gods are watching.
And this is the thing that I'm saying is that religion has always played a critical role in ancient Tongan / Polynesian society, and that was a big driver. That's why Christianity and adopting Christianity and implementing it into every aspect of your culture and your life was critical, and something that Polynesians understood and could easily see the how to apply this religion into everyday life. And so being religious has always been part of the Polynesian culture. And that's a big driver of why our people behave the way they behave today.
So they don't do it. Just like Tatapu, when they touched the body of the king, they didn't care that the priests weren't there, or at the Matapules, or the kings weren't there. They really felt like if they touched the body of a Tapu person, the gods are watching, which called it. That was it. That's Tapu. That's living a Tapu. And I said earlier how the word Tapu, as far as America is concerned, comes from Tonga and comes from this description. I didn't find any description or this word written down at any point in time in history. And Mariner said that in Mariner's description, Tapu means sacred. The word Tapu comes from these people, and it means sacred, just like sacred means to us. The difference is when something's Tapu to these people, they act upon it. This is what they do. It's not just a thing that's sacred and can still be manipulated or can still be defiled. The sanctity can still be defiled. No. If something's tapu to these people, they behave as if it's tapu or taboo. Mariner said if there was somebody just wearing a head wrapping just on a normal day occasion, somebody would knock him down. Somebody above, either higher above him or somebody of equal standing to him would knock him down.
Self-policing state.
That's not what you wear.
Don't need a
on
military or
day,
police
on a
force
normal basis.
for that.
That's what we wear to war. So unless you're trying to go to war, take that off. That's how strongly they believed in this thing. Unless you're in a celebration like this, or unless you're working in the fields, or unless you're on a canoe, like you're allowed to wear it. Other than that, don't wrap your heads. Sometimes when your head is wrapped and a superior shows up, you have to take it off. Unless you're in actual battle and you can keep it on. But other than that, if you're wearing a wrapping on your head and a superior chief shows up, you have to take it off. And Mariner said that a lot of times the superior would show up and you see somebody start taking their turban off, and the chief would say, "Tuko fau." Tuko fau means leave the fau, leave it, it's okay. Kind of like if a general walked in and you stood at attention, he was like, "At ease, soldier." Basically, that's their version of at ease. Tuko fau. It's kind of like saying, "Oh, keep your hat on." And maybe it is a foreign thing, or at least had ties to foreign behavior. We do know that the whole tipping the hat in old America showed respect. We do know that taking the hat off back in old England is a sign of respect, right? So perhaps it was adopted. I don't know. But
too early in my mind. I think it's too early to say it was adopted from the West. This sounds to be something that was pre-existing for a much longer time and predated William Mariner, but that's my 2 cents.
That's what it was. In normal times, perhaps taking the hat off showed the same type of respect, or tipping the hat in the old cowboy days, removing the hat from the old England days, when a superior shows up, removing the fau in the old Tonga days. Finau used to tell Mariner, if you ever run into a common guy with his head wrapped, knock him to the ground, knock him down. He needs to know that he needs to take that off or he's going to get knocked down. Now, we understand the strength of the faith and the strength of, right, how hardcore we are when it comes to faith, how hardcore
Absolutely.
we are when it comes to
as
loyalty,
I mentioned earlier,
allegiance. This is how hardcore they were when it came to this. In old English days or old American days, like, remove your hat, show respect, remove your hat, they would tell you. But in Tonga, there's like, no, if he's wearing it,
smack him.
That means he doesn't know, or he's not understanding, or he doesn't care. He's not acknowledging that that's a common sense here in Tonga. If he's around you, anybody lower than you knock them down. But Finau explains to Mariner that this is a thing that has to do with God or the gods. This is something of their own. That's why Finau allowed foreigners to have hats or to wear head wrappings or whatever. He did. Nobody outside of Tonga, when they came there, had to live according to all of these rules and regulations, because Tonga knows that we are governed by different gods than you. These are.
I find that interesting, right? That was a well understood concept, that the obligations and customs that Tongans placed on themselves was because they were Tongan and therefore had that obligation, and that someone who was not Tongan did not have those obligations. I find that very intriguing, because in what I've seen in other cultures is they say, regardless of whether you're not, this is how it's done here, you will follow it. That's the way it is. In Tongan culture, it seems to take into account, yeah, you're not Tongan, you're not under the same obligations. You don't have the same responsibilities. This is but basically the perception or the concept that they're saying is these are inherited obligations and concepts, not necessarily one that's imposed per se, and that you can disregard just because you don't like it. It is your Tongan. This is a fundamental piece of being Tongan. is this religious understanding, is understanding your role and your function. So I find that very interesting that it was, you find this even with George Vason. There was an extreme level of flexibility for outsiders, not necessarily have to following these same strict rules and duties and responsibilities for one simple fact that they were not Tongan. I find that a little bit interesting. And this is where we're talking about religious hereditary concepts, and a clear identity of what it meant to be a Tongan.
Our gods were living up to their expectations. That's why Tonga will always be Tonga no matter what, because they've always thought that our gods approve of this behavior. Our gods disapprove of that. Our gods disapprove of this. That's why we don't, when we say, because they're not acting like we know the gods or God would have us act or speak or do things. We know and we recognize it immediately. Look at how that is. Look at how this is. That's not how we.
It's very much, it has the feeling and the perception of a covenant type people, covenant driven, where this covenant is something that's inherited and imposed upon you, and significantly tied to the identity and the reality of what it means to be Tongan. Right? Very interesting. Very intriguing.
Would be. That's not how Tonga does it. And it's a more commonsensical thing, but it's a sense or an influence, spiritual, that we actually believe that we are made differently, where our rules are different for us. We will allow foreigners to do it, which have nothing to do with us, but we will not disobey or disappoint our gods.
Very interesting.
We see different behaviors and
I'd
actions.
love to understand a little bit
And
better.
now in America, people are adopting these behaviors and different mentalities more and more. A lot of people are like more fie palangi or fie mea or fie ha. All these words exist in Tonga to let them know that they are veering off of the path of Tonga behavior as we see that's pleasing to the gods. That we don't believe should happen. That we don't believe we should say. That we don't believe we should do. But you don't live according to our gods. You are allowed to do it. Right? Where for us, it's tapu for us. And when we see anything miscued or misbehaved according to how we believe the gods are pleased of, we're going to call it what we call it. But we're not going to force it on anybody. None of this is forced on anybody.
Unless you're Tongan.
This is what we expect of our people. That's fie palangi. That's fie ori ori. That's fie pilitania. That's fear this, fear that. It's basically you wanting to be that instead of what we are naturally. Our culture is our culture, and we know what it is because, and a lot of it we don't have to say, but this is how we train each other to behave the way we're supposed to behave. If they're wearing a headgear or headband or whatever, knock them down. That's not what we do here. Otherwise, anybody else, all the foreigners, you can do whatever you want. There are a couple of things left out of this wedding, right? Typically, in Samoa, when you go marry somebody, when a man goes to take a bride, that man takes a payment of something, like a bale of Ngatu, something of value, right? A whole bunch of pigs or a whole bunch of canoes or something like that, right? We've seen that in the old movie Johnny Lingo, the Hawaii movie, where in Hawaii, Johnny Lingo goes over with 8 cows to buy his wife. So we know that happened. Mariner is saying that in Samoa, you do the same thing. In Samoa, you give the father a payment for the daughter, especially since the daughter is still a virgin, assuming she is. She better be. I'm giving you 8 cows. She better be. They leave that out because it's not a Tongan custom. Finau isn't going to purchase her. Moingangongo isn't going to purchase her. That's not part of the Tongan custom. We don't buy them. We fly them and wine and dine them. Not this way. All right. The other part of the Samoa way of marriage was discussing the value, right? So in the movie Johnny Lingo shows up to Moka's house to buy Mahana. Moka was so disappointed in Mahana anyway that he was like, I'll take the 3-legged cow that puts out sour milk, right? Johnny Lingo saw something in Mahana and said, no, I'll pay 8 cows, right? Somebody had 3 cows for his. The women are talking, oh, my husband paid 5 cows for me, right?
Makes
So
me
one of them was the
special.
actual purchase. That's the thing that Tonga people left out of this ceremony. The other one was discussing, is this of value, or discussing about making the deal, right? Making propositions, pretty much doing a
Closing the
proposal
deal.
as to, is this the correct value of the daughters? Tonga didn't see that. They didn't do it that way because they thought that it was below them. If she wants me and I want her, that's enough. What anybody else thinks or feels about this, it has nothing to do with us, with me and her. As long as we're covenanted to each other, there is none of us here. We don't treat each other like property for sale. And even though they may be doing it because out of respect, or they may be doing it, whatever this is, I feel like it's an adoption or an adaptation to them dealing with other things. As far as ships showing up to Polynesia to trade, that's what it seems like. So they're thinking, oh, I'm gonna purchase this for this much, I'm purchase for that much. I think somebody in the islands, right, that created Johnny Lingo and that piece of their culture, whatever that culture was, or even if it was, that it was brought in from outside influences, where Tonga said, no, we don't do that. First of all, we don't purchase our brides, 1, and 2, we don't sit and wheel and deal. The father is in appreciation of who this person is, what the person can do, perhaps their higher calling, so on and so forth. That's all of this is. The whole purchase thing, it seems like it comes from an outside influence, in my opinion. Because if Tonga isn't doing it, Tonga's Tonga, Samoa's doing it, and we learned throughout in the movie Johnny Lingo that Hawaii did it. Wherever that came for and how that kept on going, I don't know. Tonga says, no, we're not doing either of those two part of the custom. We're going to make this wedding. We're going to do a lot of the Samoa things here. But that main thing, which is the main primary thing, we're not going to do here. At night, the house on the Malae was lit, and there was light in there, and there were people there. And then Moingangongo, who's the prince, son of Finau and his company men and his Matapule,
Entourage.
they come over, they show up to the house that's sitting on the Malae with Cava and with mats from Samoa, because the Samoa stuff, that's some good stuff. They said it was silkier, or it was made of silky stuff. It was very fine and it was very valuable. And Moingangongo shows up and brings it to whatever's happening here in the Kava circle, or in the circle right at this point. This was at night. It looks like they're about to start fight Kava, start mixing. Mariner said that the Kava from Samoa back then was greatly esteemed. He did also say that the Vava'u Kava was the best Kava in time in that era. They did give it up for Kava from Samoa. Moingangongo comes and sets down the Kava and the mats in front of Finau and Finau's wife. Her name was Tupo Ve'ehala. They were sitting opposite of the entrance, and everything was stacked in front of them. Finau returns a gift to Moingangongo. He gives him 3 or 4 bottles of wine. He also gives him an hourglass, but Mariner said that there was no sand or there was no stand. It was just the glass. Gives it to him, which was probably valuable to them, but as we know, you give me an hourglass, you give me a clock that doesn't work, you give me the watch that doesn't. Okay, anyways, but it looks good, it looks nice, it looks beautiful. Who knows how to make this stuff? They didn't know how to make this stuff. It was beautiful to look at. It was probably an ornament at that time. Also give him a hoop that was sharpened like a chisel. When I say hoop, I mean the hoops off of the wine barrels, right? It was taken, it was sharpened and made to either be used as a weapon or a tool. Then Moingangongo takes his party, they go sit down opposite of the singers, basically the band, the music. So the band, they sing Samoa songs, and then it switches over to Moingangongo and his friends, and they sing Samoa songs, right? They're all singing in Samoan at this point, this whole ceremony.
Interesting.
And they're doing this for 4 or 5 hours. They're mixing, they're hanging out. They break up, and everybody breaks up and goes their separate ways to their homes. Everything's done. It's been a week or so. Party's done, celebration's done. Everything's come to an end. And Finau immediately turns his focus
Vava'u.
to Vava'u. Finau immediately sends word to all of Ha'apai. All the men that age, the warrior age, are to gather in 10 days. And he says, leave the 2 oldest of each home to continue to watch the plantation. So the Uta guys, right? Leave the 2 oldest of each house. bring the rest, and make sure everybody brings their clubs, brings their spears, their weapons of war, and bring provisions, bring some food, bring some stuff, because we're about to travel. They gather in 10 days at the Mala'e, same thing. Weapons, they're painted, ready for war, heads are wrapped. Finau's about to review all the warriors. Mariner said there was about 6,000 young warriors ready for war. Finau gives a speech. He tells them, typically when we go to war, we go to battle, we win some, we lose some. We go in there, and as we're losing, we retreat, right? We've talked about the battles from before and the wars from before. He tells these guys that that's the old way of fighting in Tonga now. Now we are going to get grouped up, stay in a group, and no matter what, we stay moving forward, to put into their minds that there is no retreat in us, to put into their minds, we're not here just to fight. We're here to win, or we're here to die, but we're moving forward. This is the speech Finau gives his warriors. We're not going to retreat anymore. Anybody falls, they fall. The group stays together in a big group. 6,000.
All or nothing. All or nothing on
6,000
this battle. On this.
That's a lot of freaking people, especially people of that age group, right? We're talking 15, 16, 17, up to mid-20s. 6,000 of them. And he's saying, let's stay together, let's move forward, and let's not back down. Any of us fall, the rest of the group keeps moving forward. We're not retreating. We're going to go and we're going to win, or we're going to die. That is the resolve of what we feel like we're here to fight for. We already know that he wants power. We already know his political moves and all that, but he's speaking to the brave young warriors. And he has to say this, talking about the other half of their warriors that they took to Nuku'alofa. We're talking about these guys as cousins. We're talking about this is our own family. Finau's going up against his own auntie. You guys are going to be going up against your
Games
own
of
cousins.
Thrones.
Of course, he's not going to say it like that to make it look like a family or anything like that. This is war. Hapai is going up against Vava'u. Now, this he said is because a lot of the stories that Mariner told him, right? If you think about the old wars in America, when the British came and America came, they just walked towards each other, cannons firing, guns firing, horses riding, everything, but they're moving towards each other. Neither of them are retreating. Eventually they retreat, which is probably part of the story that either he didn't hear or he wasn't interested in, but they are moving together towards each other. They're fighting and they're dying. There is no backing up, which is probably the part that he loved. He's admiring, this is how the English fight. This is how big countries fight. We're going to fight the same way. Finau tells them, if you find a spear coming towards your chest, somebody standing there with a spear, pushing it into your chest, you pull that spear towards you and you kill that guy. This is the speech. Of course, any brave young man is like, hell yeah. You hit me with the spear, I'm going to walk even closer to you so I'm close enough to kill you. Of course, this is some warlike speech that he's giving at this point. Mariner said, and this thing that he said it determinedly. He said it, if you find a spear in your
motivate
chest
the
and
army, guys.
pushing it towards you, you pull it towards you and you kill him. That everybody, Mariner said, everybody was like trembling. Yeah, that's how hard I'm going to fight today or that day. Mariner said that he was speaking with such power and such force and so loudly that you can hear it from a faraway distance. This is how loud Finau was speaking at this point. This is how determined he was to win. This is how much courage he wanted to press upon or push into the hearts of these young men. After he speaks, a few of them run up to him and strike their club on the ground or strike whatever weapon they had on the ground. This club is for Pita. Finau, don't fear. Don't have any fear of these men. They don't have real warriors in Vava'u. We're the real warriors. We're going to win. We're going to fight for you. Do not fear for your life. We got you. That's what the Hapai guys are saying at this point. That's how well he was at speaking. That's how good he was at inspiring the warriors. He was a freaking Tony Robbins. He was a freaking Donald Trump, where the warriors ran up to him and struck their clubs down and told them not to fear. We got you. We got your back. So Finau tells them the plan. All right. This is the plan. We're going to go sit in front of their fortress. Everybody sit and sit still. Nobody's going to move. They're going to shoot arrows. They're going to throw spears, but they're going to sit as if nothing's happening, as if nothing's going on, to show them that they're not afraid. I don't know where Finau got this plan from. Perhaps it is the English way, right back in the old British and American days when they just got together and they stood in front of each other. The cannons would go off, the guns would go off, but nobody would move until the charge was given to charge. So this is Finau's plan. Let's go sit in front of there. Nobody move until I give the call to go to charge. And then we'll all charge together. Then they go ahead and practice a few times. He inspires them with words of honor and glory, that death isn't to be feared, but is to be despised. We are not to go there to fear death. Matter of fact, let's go and embrace it. Because once they bury our bodies, those bodies will leave stories that the rest of our families and the next generations will hear of. Let us not fear death. It isn't a thing of real warriors to fear death. Let us hate the thought of fear and of death. So he sends everybody from the north, the northern part of Hapai, he sends them all to Ha'ano. Go wait in Ha'ano. That's the meeting place before we go to Vava'u. Everybody in the south, go be with your families at this time, and then we'll all meet in Ha'ano. And in Ha'ano, from there, we'll make our way to Vava'u. They're in a Ha'ano, and a few canoes show up from Vava'u. Hapai guys, Hapai people show up from Vava'u. The Vava'u guys let them go and let them come back to Hapai. They come back with news that Toiumu doesn't want war. She doesn't want battle. Remember, this is Finau's auntie. She's saying, from these guys that came back with the message, that Toiumu doesn't want battle. She doesn't want war, but she will protect Vava'u because she knows what a treacherous man you are, Finau. This is the message that these Hapai guys came back to Ha'ano from Vava'u. They know that they feel like you're a very treacherous person, and they will protect themselves. Toiumu also feels that to try to make peace or to try to be at peace with Finau would be to their own detriment, to their own death. Like she knew if she were to create peace with Finau, Finau's going to come and kill most of the power guys, the Matapules and the high chiefs, just so that he can own Vava'u, and Toiumu is not going to have that. She's not going to allow it. So Toiumu...
And it's funny because that's exactly what Taufa'ahau did after Laupiri Tonga leaves the Battle of Velata. Taufa'ahau goes on a revenge tour to really give his feedback to those type of people that he mentioned.
Said, we would rather meet Finau on the field and die in battle than to pretend like we're going to live in peace and have Finau come kill us anyway to exact revenge for our subordinate behavior. So their plan is for some of the warriors in Vava'u, as soon as you guys show up, they're going to rush out and kill all the Palangis because they know that the Palangis man the guns, the Palangis man the cannons. They're going to come kill them first so that the fight could be fair. Tonga on Tonga.
Devastating, though.
At this point in
Don't know how
time,
you see that as fair.
there's just a side story. A guy named Thomas Eversfield, a Palangi guy from England, and another guy, John Roberts, a black guy from Tortola. So these are two basically kids, 15, 16-year-olds, stole a bale of Ngatu from one of the higher chief's place, or a sacred place. Now, if they were Tongan, if they were Tonga kids, they would have immediately died. They would have killed them immediately. But since they're foreigners and they don't understand the culture, they don't understand us, because this Balang kid and this black kid, they don't know our ways, we're going to give them a pass. The Matapules get together and they say, all right, let's give them a pass. They don't know our culture. They don't know our ways. But this time we're going to let it ride, let it slide. But to at least appease the gods, because this was a sacred place that they stole this Ngatu from, they sat them down and they basically talked to them and told them, this place is sacred. You're not to steal from this place. And basically talk to the little boys, to the young boys. They're not little boys, they're young boys, right? 14 to 16 years old. The leaves of the Ifi tree was wrapped around the Matapules as they went with the priest to this sacred house that was consecrated for king and consecrated for sacred things. They went and they sat down in front of the house and they addressed the gods and basically came to tell the gods, these guys weren't trying to steal from you. It's almost like they're stealing from, right, the tithing house or the bishop's storehouse or wherever, you know, the sacred houses, and address the gods and tell the gods, these guys aren't part of our beliefs and they don't know, but we're coming to ask for them, on behalf of them, to give them forgiveness. Talking to the gods. They're young boys, they're foreigners, they don't understand the penalty or the consequences. They're basically speaking from in mediation of these foreigners. And they're asking so that the gods don't punish them. Like, we didn't do this. This is how tapu that place was that they stole from. Please forgive them. They're young and dumb, and this wasn't us that stole from your storehouse. So even though we spared them because they're young and they don't understand our customs and culture of what we do, we're asking you to have mercy on us and don't punish us because of this foul offense. Finau sits the two boys down and reprimands them and tells them what great of offense they just performed, stealing from a sacred place. That's the house of the gods. That's the house of the priests. It was sanctified, or it was made tapu. Yelled at them and told them what it was, which means by them, this Palang kid and this black kid were both understanding Finau, which means they both spoke and understood Tongan. And Mariner said that they were both frightened. They were both scared that this happened, that they did this, and obviously they're not going to do it again, seeing how serious the severity of it, with them calling the Matapules to dress in their peace attire, with the priests to come and ask their gods to forgive them for what they did. Forgive us, the Tonga people, for what you two did. Mariner said they were both scared to death. And probably, like when they take kids to jail and the faces, or I can't remember what the show is called, but the fear basically cured them of stealing. After all the affairs were taken care of, the two oldest of each home stayed to take care of the plantation for their families. Everybody else, about 4,000 mariners, said they all made their way up north to Ha'ano to prep for war. They all get to Ha'ano. The next day they have a celebration of the king being there in Ha'ano, and they have a feast, and they acknowledge, or at least they sit down and they're going to acknowledge and discuss this with the gods. Right, just like they did before. They're going to bring things as far as what they're planning to do and what they're trying to do at this point and bring it to the gods, have the priests there to start planning, preparing, and asking that the gods be with them as they venture off into war. So they plan it out. The original plan is for Finau to go with his Matapules and 3 or 4 canoes with the young warriors, but to make sure that the ones that they do go with, that they aren't related to anybody. To make sure that the ones that they do go with, they're of no relation as far as whether they're cousins or family or whatnot, in case they get inspired to desert and go to the other side. Most everybody there had relations or had family in Vava'u, so they knew that, you know what, let's just go with a couple canoes, and this is our plan, to go with the ones that don't really know, so that we can make our initial entrance into Vava'u. Let's also make sure we go with the younger guys that weren't part of the Tuponiwa assassination, who weren't part of that plan. Let's make sure it's them, so that it doesn't excite an immediate scuffle and battle. And our plan is to go over and offer peace, or at least bring terms of peace in a friendly manner. We want peace. And having had time to think about this and think about words and whatnot, to at least make this initial contact and offer them peace. Be friendly with them. We have guys, young warriors, who are just security, but not relation or wasn't part of the assassination, and neutral guys, and we're going to go and we're going to offer these guys peace and see what happens. They load 3 canoes. Mariner jumps in with Finau. There's a couple other Englishmen on the other canoes, and some of the choicest fighting men. So some of the main baddest warriors, they're going in these 3 canoes to make this initial contact in Vava'u. They pull up to Vava'u, and there's guys loading into canoes trying to escape Vava'u, because they feel like, oh, Finau is here, and there's 3 canoes.
War is coming. Let's get out of here.
There, some of the baddest warriors are here. There's a fleet coming. So some of those guys get into canoes and they start leaving because Finau's bringing war. So these guys are basically cowards, making their way out. Or for whatever reason, they thought, oh, maybe we should just...
Strategic.
Okay, they were cowards. Finau comforts them, tells them, hey, no, I'm not here for war. You guys don't have to worry. Just I came here to bring peace, and let's talk this over. I just came here to plan, to see if we can just plan something, work something out, so we can still live in peace. After he talks to them, whatever, and then he says, okay, you guys can go. And then they paddle around to the fortress that they built. Those guys all leave and go in that direction. As Finau, Mariner, and his group get to about, because they had to sail around too, getting over there too, get to about 5 miles or south of Vava'u. They're getting in close, and they see a group of warriors with clubs, with spears, standing on the beach. They're splashing the water, just like they did in Nuku'alofa when they're in Maufanga, shouting war whoop, chee-hoo, right? Painted, wrap, ready for war, as Finau and them are
Ready
moving
for
around.
war.
As they got closer, one of the main guys from inside of the fortress came out, and his name was Taetangata. Taetangata had a head wrapping around his head, one of those ones that I said that was you only wear in times of war. And he was in the presence of Finau, which means to him, in battle and in war, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm wearing this to show you that I'm ready to die too. And these guys were all wearing the head wrappings. Taetangata tells Finau and that group, Toiumu sent me out here to see if anybody in here that was part of the assassination of Tuponua was out here, and for me to kill them. I'm here to lay down my life for our great chief, who was a great man, Tuponua. Finau tells them, oh no, I'm not here for that. We're not here for war or battle. We're here for peace.
Coffee.
As you can see, these guys weren't
Tricky,
part
tricky,
of the
tricky.
assassination, and they're the young guys, even though they had some of his baddest warriors in there. Mariner, a couple Palangis were there. We're here to talk peace. As soon as Finau says that, Taetangata gets on board, takes Kava root, puts it in front of Finau, takes the headband off, and kisses Finau's feet and show of respect. He told Taetangata, go tell your chiefs, go tell Toiumu, this is what I've come for, and I was wondering if I can get past to Neafu. In Neafu, there are houses dedicated to the gods. Finau wanted to make sure he got there first. Just like their war in Nuku'alofa, they went to Ma'ofanga first, where all the chiefs were buried, and the houses dedicated to the gods were in Ma'ofanga. So they went to Ma'ofanga first to address their ancestors and the gods. The ceremony of the tuki was performed there, where they punched their face in front of the king's cemetery, and then they went to battle in Nuku'alofa. Well, Finau wanted passage to Neafu, where the same thing was there. That was in Ma'ofanga. Houses dedicated to the gods and the old kings of past and the old chiefs of Vava'u.
A lot of ancestor worship over there
and he goes
in Tonga
takes
during
Kava,
that time.
puts it in front of the houses of the gods, makes that acknowledgement and all that, and then he makes his way over to talk peace to the chiefs of Vava'u. Early the next morning, he takes him and his 3 canoes, and they make their way around from Neafu over to the fortress
Feretoa.
where everybody was staying. He gets there and he wanted to go up onto basically the hill, or remember how they built Feretoa with these giant dirt mounds and basically a hill-looking thing to protect them from the cannons. He wanted to go sit up there and address the Matapules, address his auntie, who's the high chief or the head chief there, to talk to him, and he was dissuaded by the other guys that were with him, or the other chiefs that were with him, not to do that, not to get that close. So Finau says, okay, let me just pull me up close to the beach so that I can get out and talk to him, which his company guys, the Matapules with him, said, no, we don't want you to get too close to the beach, because then they're going to start insulting you from on land. And those insults, and typically insults, were sometimes cause of death, especially if lower orders were insulting higher ups. So they said, if you get too close, they're going to insult you and make you, break character, basically lose your cool, and you're going to rush in out of sheer emotion to kill, because it's customary for lower people not to talk like that to chiefs. You're going to want to run in, and then they're going to basically create a reason or an excuse to kill you there. Finau says, no, you know
Maria
what? With all due
Ma'ofanga.
respect, guys, I know that it
Talangi
is
says, my
high
dad's
character
village, Ma'ofanga.
for one to control his emotions, for a man to be disciplined and not lose his cool, to stay calm and collected. So
Composure.
I plan on maintaining that character. No matter what they say, no matter what insults they throw out, I'll make sure I'll stay calm and collected. So he gets in the smaller canoe, and led by the Matapules, goes and pulls up to shore, and immediately as they pull up to shore, they start insulting Finau. Now we gotta put this into perspective. These are lower orders insulting a king or insulting a high chief. Insulting, yelling, whatever it is, right? Insults of the family, insults of his character, insulting everything about it. And he has to stay cool. But he already has a plan, so he already knows what he's gonna do to them anyway. Some of them came out and threw a piece of yam at him, or threw a piece of pork at him and said, this is all we have. Take that and get out of here. Get out of here. And some even yelled out, what, you tired of living in Hapai where they don't have anything? They don't have any food? You guys don't have any food in your place, on your island? Right? They start insulting,
comparing and
king
insulting
in this fashion. But they don't care. They're all ready to die anyway. You guys killed our high chief. Toiumu has given us the go-ahead. we're here for battle. So they're trying to make Finau and his guys break character to give them a reason to kill them all right there on the beach. But Finau and his men don't budge. They don't move. They insult. They're throwing food at them, telling them this is all we have left. You guys take that and get out of here. They're clowning and making fun of how scarce food is in Hapai. Those are the type of insults that they're throwing at Finau. Mariner says the Vava'u is famous for yams, great yams, big yams, and large numbers of hogs. The Ngatu was of finer quality. They were better printed, right? The trees that they make the lolohea out of, right? The stuff that they paint the Ngatu with, the ink. That they had a lot of that in Vava'u. They had a lot of artists. And this plant that they used to paint Ngatu with, they really didn't find it was scarce in Hapai. But there was a lot of it in Vava'u. Nice Ngatu, better mats, more food, more hogs, bigger, better yams. Cava's number one. Mariner's already mentioned that the best Cava in Tonga was found in Vava'u. So Vava'u was obviously a place of bountiful things that come from Vava'u, from the land, which is probably why Finau wanted it. He wanted it all. But Finau, who was known to be mad and quick-tempered, and when things like this happened, because he was looking at the bigger picture, he was able to hold himself and control himself, even though for him, his status, and I guess culturally too, the status of a man, especially
setting up a trap,
ranks, was a big and a sacred thing to the people. Nonetheless, he was able to control himself. Finau gives this hour-long speech of peace. Mariner said he was eloquent as far as him trying to convince that he had nothing to do with Tuponiua's death, how great man he was his brother. All he wanted was to make peace with the people of Vava'u, join together, all these things, right? Took him an hour to speak. Mariner said he sounded very good. He did a good job, basically, which is basically how a politician is supposed to sound, even if some people know that he's a piece of crap. A lot of people were perhaps not even, they weren't even giving him the time of day, not even hearing him, because they already know how he is. Nonetheless, he at least started to convince some of the higher ups, the Matapules. He expressed love and appreciation for his aunt, right? His auntie, Toi Umu, how much he loves her, how much he respects her. And
this guy's quite the negotiator,
how terrible of a thing that happened to Tuponiua, that it would cause her to turn against me. I love her and I respect her. I wouldn't do anything to her, considering he was a great man. I had nothing to do with it. Umu, I love and respect you. We should be able to continue to live in peace despite of everything that happened. He said that nothing would hurt him more than for them to assume that his intentions aren't genuine. If you don't think that I'm telling the truth, it would hurt me more that you guys don't believe me or understand and know that my intentions are for peace. And hopefully he's believing, that his behavior coming in without breaking character and getting all riled up when they were insulting him would help, which it probably did. He was basically giving a campaign speech. I hope you guys understand that this is for good intention. I hope that I can be the leader that you guys need and love, right? So he's campaigning. He's hoping that he's telling them, I want to be in rule of this part of the kingdom, and I want you guys to submit, knowing that I'm a humble guy and a peaceful guy, and I want nothing but the best for you. But we know otherwise, right? Some of the Matapules came and made their intentions known. They told Finau, okay, if you want to rule, we will acknowledge you king, but we would like you, just you and your family, to stay here. That way we can rule here in Vava'u. The ruling class should live in Vava'u because of the abundance of commodities that comes from Vava'u, right? So they offered him, come and stay with us. We'll rule here. You'll talk amongst us. We'll be your counselors as far as chiefs and matapules and kings and whatnot, because there's a lot of chiefs in Hapai that we don't trust. There's a lot of them that are disguised over there that we just don't trust the Hapai guys. They're too treacherous, and we'd rather live in peace and do the discussion.
Anybody from Hapai have any defense for that?
That's what they offer Finau. The other option is Finau is, you reside in Hapai, we send you yearly, annually, we will send you tribute. we'll send you tribute annually. Nobody in Hapai, we won't allow anybody to come visit, or you can probably bring instruction, but we don't want you guys to come over here in big groups, because we know that a lot of people in Hapai, they're always, they're always thinking stuff up. They're always thinking of taking
Opportunistic.
stuff over. It's something in the water in Hapai that makes you guys want to conquer everything. So those are the options. You either come live here and rule here, or you stay in Hapai with everybody, you stay there, and we'll just send you annual tribute. But don't send groups over here, because we don't trust the treachery and the mindset of the Hapai people. They're always trying to start something. They always try to want to rule something, which they're not wrong. Us here in Vava'u, we're tired of disruptions. We're tired of insurrection. We're tired of war. We don't want that anymore. The Vava'u want to be free, but if we do stay under your rule, we will send you tribute. There's something about the people in Hapai that they're too ambitious for their own good. Then they go and describe this fortress here we built specifically because of the ambitions of Hapai, because of your ambitions. We built this to protect us, just for self-defense. We didn't build this thing for war. We only built this to protect ourselves. Finau couldn't agree to that. He said, that's not ruling. That just means that you guys don't respectfully admonish that I am king by doing it this way. We and everybody should be able to travel back and forth freely under my rule. If we do it this way, that means that you guys have your own thing
Polynesian
going. It means that you're
empire once
separate
upon
from
a
us,
time.
and that destroys my dignity as a king. It destroys the way people look at me and my rule if we did it that way. It's better if we travel back and forth freely, that everybody can be free and live free and whatnot. So he's preaching freedom now. He reminds them, remember, I assisted in helping Vava'u be free. I helped the Ponua free all of us from Tukuaho. Tukuaho, we had to send more than enough for even us to survive as a tribute. We had to send it to Tongatapu, right? I helped the Ponua free us from that. I just want to live free, us both islands, or at least these smaller islands apart from Tongatapu, trying to earn their trust, trying to tell them that this is a better way. We can all live freely under my rule. Finau tells them, I was a part of that whole thing with the Ponua. Some of you guys weren't about that because you guys didn't trust that we were going to win, but we did, and we did it for you. Trust me as if you trusted the Ponua.
Trust me and repeat.
But they weren't having it. They didn't trust him that way. It's he stays there, meets their conditions, or he goes back, we'll just send you tribute. They just weren't having it. And then Finau, at this point, starts to break character, because Finau then tells them, all right, well, if you guys want to live here in idleness and luxury, you know what, I'll just go live with the more manly people in Hapai. I'll go prosecute war upon Tonga myself, if that's how it's going to be. So he's insulting them. I'm going to go live with more manly people in Hapai and go take war to Tonga. He's starting to break character. He's starting to show that he's mad at them. And in all of this, the Vava'u chiefs tell him, you know what, they assure him, we love you as an individual. We just won't accept those terms. We would rather live here and live free and live in peace than to be part of something like that, to take war to Tonga all the time, to be at war all the time. So their thought processes are different. Finau wants to go back to Hapai, told him that he's just going to go take war himself. Vava'u wants to live free. They just want to be at peace. They don't want any more of this. And it kind of makes him angry, and he starts to break character. So Finau tells his Matapule, all right, let's go. Take me to my canoe. Let's go back. As he goes, they get up and they walk towards their canoes and walk to the beach. And the Vava'u Matapule watch him walk over to his canoe, and he gets to his canoe, and then he turns around and turns to them and he tells them, fine, live in idleness, live in luxury, and we'll go back to Hapai. That's it. So now they've really made him mad, and he has totally broken character at this point. Mariner said that some of the guys that were around his canoe, they started shedding tears. They felt like, he is deserving of this. He is deserving. He is, the most worthy warrior to do this. Mariner thinks that it's because of his power of persuasion. Mariner thinks that it's because perhaps Finau isn't being given his flowers to be a ruler. And so these guys, the Matapule standing around his canoe and the warriors standing around his canoe, were shedding tears because of that. I think that they were in tears because they knew what was coming up next. Because Vava'u wasn't giving up their island and giving full authority to Finau to rule, I think that the guys that were shedding tears, because Mariner thinks that it's because his power of persuasion and he's right and he has been taken advantage of and hasn't received his flowers. But I think that those guys that were crying because they knew what was coming next. If they didn't accept this, now we have to come back and take it by force. Because it's their family, their relations, they're related to them. So this is some of the parts where we see that Mariner sees it one way as far as his powers of persuasion, and he was right, and he isn't receiving the credit due to him. Where I'm seeing it as, well, these guys they're all related. I think they're crying because now they have to come back and kill their own family because they didn't give up Vava'u as Finau had hoped. But he could be right. This is just my observation as far as how I would feel, because he gave his best speech or whatever. Because the Vava'u people are right to feel that way. They're right to think that, no, we can't trust him. We can't trust him. We can't even trust Hotbite. Vava'u was right to feel and think that.
Look at what Ukalala
because
did.
they're too ambitious. They want war all the time. They want to rule everything.
Where
Vava'u's like, no, we want to live at peace. And now these Hotbite guys, warriors, standing around the canoe crying because now they know they have to come back and kill their family. The same ones that were with them when they took the Port-au-Prince, the same ones that were with them when they went to Nuku'alofa to war to take Duaho, the same ones who took Duaho out and hold that. Now we have to kill the other half of our army and who happen to be our relatives or relations. That's why I feel they were crying. So the ones that were not going to be moved or moved by the speech, they're the ones that came out of the fortress to meet with Finau. And then there was other high chiefs and warriors and everybody that they kept
quite the affair
of the fortress so that they don't hear what Finau is saying, because they might be convinced of Finau's words because he may have some points and because he may be right. So the stronger ones emotionally and mentally are the ones that came out to receive Finau and listen to him because they were steadfast in what they think is right for Vava'u. Those are the ones that came out. And then they left everybody else in. The chiefs that may or may not have been convinced, and all the younger guys and the warriors, because of how convincing his argument was to rule Vava'u also. The ones that were steadfast in the cause of freedom and liberty and peace, those are the ones that came out outside of the fortress to meet and talk with Finau. They just couldn't take a chance on anybody being convinced by Finau because he was such an eloquent speaker, because he was such a convincing debater. All his arguments had points that perhaps the weaker of mind or the weaker of emotion would have been like, you know what, he's right. They left all those guys in the fortress. No, we stand for peace, we stand for liberty. We want to be free. So it's only the strongest mentally and emotionally is going to go out there and meet with him, because you guys are the ones he can't convince. Mariner compliments the fortress. He says it looks very good. The appearance of it from the outside with its steep hills that cover the fortress itself, it's very formidable. It looks like it's very prepared. They're prepared for war. Mariner says that that's perfect. It's better than the one that the Nuku'alofa was built, because these are giant mounds that cover the entire walls of bamboo reeds, and people can stand on there with arrows and with spears and throw them down at whoever approaches. He said that he could see people, warriors with clubs and spears, running around on the top of these mounds that were surrounding the fortress, made of red clay, and the reflection of the sun on it made it look like a giant orange wall of red clay. But they could easily run on the top of this, which was different from the Nuku'alofa one, which were just bamboos with platforms for people to stand on with arrows and bows and spears. This one was different. It was all just straight dirt, clay, and they can run around on top of it, and they wouldn't even touch the bamboo wall. Mariner said that the guys that were running around on top of these walls of mounds of dirt or red clay had streamers made out of coconut leaves. You know, when you take the coconut leaf and you strip that little piece off of the spine of the coconut leaf and tied it to their arms and tied it to their heads and tied it to their legs. So when they're running around, he said it looked very romantic, but it looked nice. It's like just wearing headbands and armbands with
stylish
that flapped in the wind as it blew. It almost looked like they were floating. That's how cool these things looked tied to it. So Finau, Mariner, the two Palangis, and the warriors that went with Finau in this group, they all get into their canoes and they start leaving out. And they were in an inlet. So as they pulled in to wherever they were in Vava'u, there was land on both sides, and they went into this inlet. and they pulled out of that inlet and started heading for Hapai along the side of Vava'u, and they stopped by at a place still in Vava'u. They get to a small island still in Vava'u, and they get out and they strip this entire little island of almost all of its kava. They just pull the kava out, they take it and they load it up and they take it with them onto their canoes. And the reason why there weren't people on these smaller islands or outside is because Toiumu wanted everybody to be inside of the fortress. So now there's a whole bunch of areas and islands around Vava'u that had a lot of kava in there, but
So all of
Toiumu
Vava'u
wanted
only
everybody to
has
get inside of the fortress so that they could be safe
had
from any kind of
8,000
invasion.
people.
They get to a small island called Hunga. The way Meredith spelled it is Hoonga. They end up there and they stay there for the night. Because remember, nobody else is outside of the fortress. They're all in there now. The next morning, they sail out, back to Hapai, and shortly later, they get back to Ha'ano, where all the Hapai warriors are waiting for word on what the next move is. Okay? So that's chapter 5. I was going to break it up into 2 parts, but that's chapter 5. That's what we learned. We learned about Hapai and the Hapai guys, Vava'u relations, how they were with each other and whatnot. And to be honest, I'm sure there's a lot of us. I mean, for me, I think the smartest thing as far as Finau is concerned, as soon as he got to Vava'u, they should have took him out then. But because they didn't take him out then, and so many of the warriors and the chiefs respected him, and so many people loved him because they were still related to even to the guys that showed up with him to Vava'u, as far as warlike or the war mentality, to avoid anything further, they probably shouldn't have taken him out that. They should have taken him out then. But as we will see, and we're about to see in the next chapter, how war was between Hapai and Vava'u, because now they got to go back. Finau isn't going to stop until he rules. And the history that we have is that Finau Ugalala's from Vava'u. Well, we're about to find out and see why people think that he's actually from Vava'u, right? Why the history says he's from Vava'u. We're about to see that now, because they're about to go into war in the next chapters, and I'm going to bring that to you in detail, full detail of how this war happens, and you're going to see the characteristics and the behaviors of the Tongans before, during, and after war. Okay, so stay tuned for chapter 6. I'll take a look at it, see how many parts I need to break it up into, or probably just do all of it and just have a long video. But that's chapter 5. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Okay, Tokiukamea.
Yeah, malo lolo. Boy, that was great content. Really appreciate Lolo putting that together. And that's brings us to the close of the live digital Kava session. I mean, really interesting to look back now with this perspective and understanding of how Tonga at large, as an empire, as a priest king under the Tu'itonga leadership and role, and how these things fit in. And obviously, right now, Tonga is fragmented. The Tu'ikanukupolu was assassinated by Ulukalala and his brother Tuponiwa, and that's the stage that we're in right now in this chaos. But you can, if you understand and can keep in mind on a national level or like empire level mentality and thinking, you can see the threads of how this relates to ancient Polynesian structure, the Tu'itonga's role, influence, and how history overall developed. That can be really understood better and validate certain things that happen even between Taufa'ahau and Laufidi Tonga. So really great episode there by Cava University, Lolo Tukia there. And with that being Tuyaki, sorry, not Tukia. With that being said, thank you very much for joining me on another live digital Kava session here on the Polynesianized podcast. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the interactions. Please like, share, hype the video. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, On Facebook, we're Polynesianized and also Te Vita Edge Fale. On Patreon, we're also on TikTok. So really, please follow us on those platforms, like, share, and it really goes a long way. And as always, as we end every live digital Kava session, we say, be bold. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, and always, always stay curious. Till next time, malo everyone. Peace.